Other than that, the lens is pretty much perfect. There's not much to say. I should cut the review here and call it a day. And welcome back. Today it's finally time to talk about him, the new Fujifilm 56mm F1.2 R WR. I think I didn't miss any letter. Uh, if I did, Fujifilm names are complicated. Anyways, we all knew this lens was gonna be announced this year, and this made this lens one of the most anticipated ones in the Fujifilm lineup. The previous version was considered by many one of the best Fujifilm lenses, and I am among one of those. I mean, I've always considered that a little bit of a masterpiece. So I was really curious to see what they could do to improve such a great lens. Now we know that the new lens is a little bit different in many aspects, and it comes at a not cheap, but it comes at $999, which is again not cheap. But and you will find out throughout the review, despite not being cheap, this may be considered a bargain if compared to other lenses from other manufacturer that cover the same environment, the same target. But you'll see more on that in just a minute. And consider this is just an initial review. I didn't have that many shooting with it. I only used it for a couple of weeks now. So it is an initial review. I will definitely follow up with more videos, with more specific ones, with comparison with other lenses and all of that. But let's just dive into what this lens is. Now, from a construction standpoint, it is a all metal lens, and it's the classical Fujifilm premium design when it comes to building lenses like this. We all know that Fuji is doing some lenses with a plastic design. This is all metal. This is the old way of Fujifilm of doing lenses, and this makes the lens not lightweight. I mean, it's 445 grams, which is, I mean, it's not lightweight to Fujifilm standards, but it's lightweight compared to other 85 millimeters equivalent f1.4 or f1.2 or even f1.8 if we're being honest. So yeah, it's not lightweight, but it's not heavy either. And compared to the previous version, this is a little bit fatter. The lens diameter, the overall diameter of the lens is bigger, and this makes it a little bit front heavy on the XT line, especially the double digit one, but it fits perfectly. Actually, let me show you in a second. Let's do it live. It makes it fit perfectly fine on an XH2. As you can see, yeah, it is a little bit big, but it's not too big, and it doesn't unbalance the camera too much. So yeah, it's a well-built lens. It's a premium one, and it's what you would expect from Fujifilm. And from a construction standpoint, it is also weather sealed, which I don't remember. The previous lens, I think it wasn't. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. But again, construction-wise, is a great lens. What really matters, however, despite construction, which is satisfying when you hold the lens, but it ends over there, it's image quality. Now, image quality is what determines whether this lens is a go or no go, whether this lens improves over the previous one or not. Because again, as I said, the previous one was already a great lens, and it was hard to improve on that. It was really hard to get better than that. And yet, Fujifilm managed to improve in pretty much every aspect that they could improve. And let's just jump into it. So the lens addresses one of the criticism that many had on the previous one, which was the minimum focusing distance. Because yeah, you have a 1.2 lens, but it was 70 centimeters from the sensor plane with the previous one, and it's 50 centimeters now. This makes a whole lot of a difference when it comes to getting close to a subject. This makes a significant distance in the freedom that you have when you start when you shoot with an 85 millimeters equivalent. And this could have impacted the image quality, but we'll see later what the image quality is. Distortion is non-existent. I mean, it's with a lens like this, you don't expect too much distortion anyways, and if anything, you may get pincushion distortion, but I didn't see any here. And when talking about vignetting is visible at f1.2. It gets way better already at f2, where is almost gone, and from f2.8 there's no vignetting at all. So it's a really great performance here from this lens, because vignetting is usually one of those aspects where with the super bright, super wide aperture lens, you may get some concern there. Now let's talk about sharpness, which I think it's one of the parameters that many are looking at, although it is arguably the most important one when it comes to a portrait dedicated lens. But let's just jump on that. And I remind you that since I have the XH2, I'm testing all of the gear with that one when it comes to sharpness, because I want to see the worst if possible. Now, if we start looking at the files from f1.2, at the center is incredibly sharp. It's unbelievably sharp, if you ask me. It's really incredible. And corners are a tad behind, but they grade already at f1.2, which is astonishing if you ask me. At f2, there's a minimum improvement in the center, and the corners get even better, starting to narrow the gap with the center. And this keeps improving in the corners as you stop down, while the center is pretty much perfect already at f2. And you get the peak at f5.6, where it's super sharp across the frame, and it's incredibly sharp. I mean, again, I keep saying that, but it's incredibly sharp. And this goes on at f8, while at f11 the diffraction starts to kick in, and f16 the file is not as usable because most of the definition, most of the resolution is gone. Sharpness is not everything for a lens. There are other things that need to be considered, and longitudinal chromatic aberration is non-existent at all. The lens suffers some flares, especially when the strong light source is in the center of the frame, like the sun in this picture over here. And there's minimal amount of ghosting that it's difficult to find in the pictures, but it's more visible when you shoot in video as you pan around. And fringing is very well controlled. I couldn't find any visible fringing even in high contrast areas. And the bokeh, now I liked the previous version bokeh, but this one with 11 blade aperture, it is just incredibly smooth, and it's smooth regardless of the aperture setting. I mean, it's smooth at 1.2, but it's smooth also. Of course, there's more depth of field, but it's also smooth at f8. The lens doesn't give away its bokeh smoothness when you stop it down, which is something hard to achieve when you're working with lenses like this. To me, honestly, this is as close to perfection as a lens has ever been, at least in my experience for the one that I've tested. If anything, the only thing that I may complain about is that maybe there's even too much contrast on that, because other than that, the lens is pretty much perfect. There's not much to say. I should cut the review here and call it a day. On that, I realized by working with the files on this shooting with my wife I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. I realized two things. One, how easy it is to work with both highlights and shadows with the XH2, so with the 40 megapixel sensor. And I also, for the first time, I got with an APS-C camera, with the combination of the XH2 and this lens, I got GFX vibes. I got the same, not the same, but very similar wow factor that I had when I tried the GFX with the 110 f2, which is arguably one of the best lenses around for that system. So I'm not saying it's overall comparable to that, because again, we all know that that system has different strengths. But we're close. We're closer than ever with this combination, and I think this tells you a lot about how good the image quality on this lens is. One of the main concerns on the previous version was the autofocus. The autofocus was decent, but it couldn't keep up with fast-moving subjects, with even with the eye detection of the X-T4, X-T3, and all of that. It was decent, but it's never been perfect. And this new lens, this new version, unfortunately doesn't have the linear motors that the new 33, 18, and 23 have, which is kind of a bummer, because I would have taken for granted that this was what we were going to get. But yet Fujifilm decided to keep the DC motors on this lens, which makes the autofocus fairly silent. Anyways, it's not that it's noisy by any stretch of imagination, but it's not as linear, like linear motor would suggest, as we all would have probably love it to be. That being said, and we're going to talk about that more when we talk about video, the hit rate that I got in the shooting with my wife, you saw the picture before, was very high. It was not 100%, of course, because we were shooting mainly at f1.2, and as soon as you move around a little bit, you have the eyelash in focus, but the eye is not in focus. But overall, it was a very high, I would say between 70 and 80%. I didn't make perfect calculation. And this is surprising, although I must mention that I am working with the new cameras, XH2S and XH2. I don't have my X-T4 anymore. I sold it because I cannot afford to have that much gear around. So I don't know how this is gonna perform with the slightly older cameras, but in general with the new cameras, the autofocus is very, very reliable, very, very good, and fast enough to track a moving face, a moving subject in a portrait shooting session, which is basically what this lens was made for. This is mainly its purpose. When it comes to video, this is definitely not a video first type of lens. By any means, this is a video lens. However, the focus surprised me also in video because it can track subject. I mean, I performed the same test. If you've seen my autofocusing test on the XH2S, I performed the same test with the XH2S, not the XH2 this time, to maintain the same camera to test it. And I performed the same test with this lens, which again, it doesn't have linear motors, it's bigger, has more glass to move, is f1.2 instead of 1.4, and it's longer. So it should have been worse by far than the 33. And yet the camera and the lens work together very, very well. It's not perfect, but it's way, way better than I expected. And I must mention that the camera now, the XH2S, has the new firmware version 2.0, so I will have to go back and test the 33 with the new firmware. I suspect they fixed the fact that it was going back to the background very often, so I hope this is the reason why. But then again, this is not a video lens first, but it's doing great. And even the stabilization, this lens is not stabilized, so you need to rely on the stabilization of the camera. And with the X-H2, the stabilization, despite the fairly long focal length, was really good. I was surprised by how good it was, at least on the panning. In general, however, this becomes a decent good option for video as well. The only thing is that not having the DC motors, not having the linear motors, but having the DC motors, the focus transitions are not as smooth as I would have loved to see. And this is basically the only downside to this lens, because all the rest seems between great and phenomenal. So, in conclusion, as you may have imagined, I am shocked by the quality of this lens because I didn't think they could improve this much over the previous one. And fortunately enough, I was wrong. This lens is by far better in any way when it comes to image quality, and it's way better in any way when it comes to autofocus, despite not being perfect for video. It's a great lens. I mean, there's not much to say about it. It's a great lens. It doesn't come cheap, but as I mentioned already, similar lenses for other systems, meaning 85mm f1.2 for Canon or f1.4 for Sony, I don't remember which ones. They all come at way more than $2,000. This lens comes at less than half the price. And it's great. It's incredibly great. The quality of this lens is spectacular. Nothing short of spectacular. When it comes to size, many complain that the lens is bigger. And yes, it is. It is a little bit bigger. But then again, the market is moving towards generating perfect lenses. And perfect lenses don't match the idea of being compact. So we have to accept the idea if we want the maximum quality, lenses are gonna be somewhat big. But then again, an 85mm f1.2 for a full frame sensor is twice as big. So again, it is big compared to Fujifilm standards. It's not big in general. Now, I am curious to try this lens against the former one, the previous version and the F1 version, because I wanna define better what lens is for who, because we know that this one replaces the previous one, but I want to understand if it makes any sense to have a look at the 1.0 lens compared to this, because that is bigger, heavier, it costs a little bit more, it doesn't cost way too much more, but is it worth it? This is something that I'm really curious, and I hope to be able to bring this content to the channel. For what concerns me, I would definitely recommend this lens. If you're looking for a portrait lens, look no further. That's your lens. That's your lens in Fujifilm system. That's your lens by far the best option. I know that there are many other, but this is by far the best option when it comes to the balance between price, image quality, and size. Unless you're looking for a super compact one, in that case, go for the 50mm f2. Other than that, I would say thank you. Leave me a thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't done that already. I have a lot of content coming. The next one should be the initial review on the 18-120, which is a very interesting lens, and then full review on the X-H2, X-H2S, and so on. I have a lot of stuff planned to bring to the channel. So subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any idea of something that you want to test when I push out the next iteration of the review, just let me know. I will be, if possible, I will try to make that happen. Again, that's it for today. Ciao, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.